Long before humans built houses, caves were prime real estate. And for tens of thousands of years, humans weren't the only ones who wanted them. There was already a tenant living there, and it was enormous. The cave bear, an animal so large that some males weighed close to 500 kilograms, noticeably bigger than even the largest modern brown bears alive today. To put that in perspective, that's roughly the weight of a small car, standing on 4 legs covered in thick fur, living inside the exact same rock shelters early humans were also searching for. And here's the part that surprises people. Humans and cave bears weren't just distant neighbors. They were, quite literally, competing for the exact same real estate, sometimes at the exact same time. Let's start with the animal itself, because it's stranger than most people expect. Despite belonging to the bear family, chemical analysis of cave bear bones shows something unusual. Their diet was overwhelmingly plant-based. Studies looking at collagen and isotope ratios in their bones suggest cave bears ate mostly vegetation, not meat, making them far less like a typical predator and more like an enormous slow-moving forager. This actually lines up with their skull and teeth structure, too, which show adaptations more suited to grinding tough plant material than tearing flesh, with broader molars and a different jaw shape compared to more carnivorous bear species. So this wasn't some aggressive man-eating monster roaming the landscape. It was closer to a massive, cave-dwelling vegetarian, though one that could still be extremely dangerous if cornered or threatened, simply because of its sheer size and strength. And here's where things get genuinely fascinating. Cave bears didn't just wander into caves occasionally. They used them constantly, generation after generation, specifically for hibernation, which could last several months at a time during the harshest parts of the Ice Age winter. This means certain caves became long-term, repeated dens, used by the same bear populations year after year, sometimes for thousands of years in a row. And this is exactly why so many cave bear remains have been found concentrated in single locations. One of the most extreme examples is Drachenhöhle in Austria, sometimes called Dragon's Cave. Excavations there uncovered the remains of an estimated 30 to 50,000 individual cave bears, accumulated over an enormous span of time from repeated hibernation use. That number alone gives you a sense of just how central these caves were to the species' entire way of life, essentially functioning as ancestral maternity wards and winter shelters passed down through countless bear generations. Similar large accumulations of cave bear remains have been found across other sites in Europe, particularly in the Alps and parts of Eastern Europe, wherever suitable limestone cave systems existed. Now, humans also needed shelter, especially during brutal Ice Age winters, and in many regions the best available caves were, unfortunately for early humans, already occupied. This created a real and sometimes dangerous overlap in territory. Archaeological sites across Europe show clear evidence of both species using the exact same caves, sometimes during different time periods, and in some cases, seemingly close together in time. This wasn't necessarily constant warfare between humans and bears. It was more like a slow, ongoing negotiation over prime shelter, spread out across thousands of years. Here's an important detail that actually gives humans a strategic advantage in the standoff. Cave bears were most vulnerable during hibernation, when their body temperature and heart rate dropped dramatically, and they entered a deep, extended sleep. This means the most viable moments for early humans to actually take over a den or hunt an individual bear were likely concentrated around this vulnerable hibernation period, rather than confronting a fully alert bear face-to-face. Evidence of this includes cave bear bones found alongside human-made stone tools and cut marks in several European sites, suggesting that hunting, or at minimum, scavenging bear carcasses was part of some human group's survival strategy. A hibernating cave bear would have represented an enormous amount of fat, meat, and fur all in one place. A huge reward for a group willing to take the very real risk of approaching one closely enough to strike. It's worth remembering that even a sleeping cave bear this size was still capable of causing serious injury if it woke and reacted defensively. So this wasn't a risk-free strategy by any means. Now let's address something you may have heard before, because it needs an honest update. For much of the 20th century, some archaeologists proposed the idea of a so-called cave bear cult. This theory suggested that early humans, particularly Neanderthals, deliberately collected and arranged cave bear skulls in caves as part of ritual or religious practice. It's a dramatic idea, and it spread widely in popular science for decades. But more recent, careful re-examination of these sites has cast serious doubt on this theory. Many researchers now believe that the arrangement of bear bones in these caves can be explained by natural processes instead. Things like water flow, sediment movement, and the simple fact that heavier, denser bones like skulls tend to settle and cluster together naturally over time in cave environments. In other words, what once looked like deliberate religious arrangement may actually just be geology and physics doing their slow, patient work over thousands of years. This is a great example of how science actually works. Ideas get proposed, they get popular, and then they get tested again with better methods and sometimes revised. Cave bears also show up in some of the oldest known human-made art. In Chauvet Cave in France, alongside famous paintings of lions and horses, there are also depictions of cave bears. There's even a cave bear skull, found placed on a rock inside Chauvet Cave itself. Though again, modern researchers are cautious about assuming this placement was necessarily deliberate or ritual in nature, rather than a natural accumulation. Either way, the fact that early humans were drawing these massive animals at all tells us cave bears were clearly a significant, memorable presence in their world. So what actually happened to the cave bear? Cave bears went extinct roughly 24,000 years ago, disappearing before many other Ice Age megafauna like woolly mammoths. The most likely explanation is, once again, not a single simple cause. Climate change during this period altered the availability of the plants cave bears depended on so heavily for food, shrinking the meadows and forests that supplied their almost entirely vegetarian diet. At the same time, competition and pressure from expanding human populations for both shelter and possibly food added additional strain on an already struggling population. Unlike more adaptable omnivorous bears, cave bears' heavy reliance on specific plant food sources may have made them especially vulnerable when the climate started shifting rapidly at the end of the Ice Age. Genetic studies on ancient cave bear DNA also suggest declining population diversity in the time leading up to their extinction, a pattern similar to other large Ice Age species that eventually disappeared. So in the end, the giant cave bear wasn't defeated by one dramatic event. It was slowly squeezed out by a changing world, shrinking food sources, and a new, increasingly capable neighbor competing for the exact same caves it had called home for hundreds of thousands of years. The next time you picture Ice Age humans huddled alone in a cave, remember, they very likely weren't alone at all. Somewhere in that same darkness, an enormous, mostly peaceful giant may have been sleeping through the winter, just a short distance away. If you want to see what actually happened when humans and cave bears crossed paths inside the exact same den, subscribe, because that story gets a lot more intense than you'd expect.